Jim, this is for you. After this one, then we don't know what will happen. What's the proper way to pronounce these Cubans?
Oliva.
Do you hear that?
Sulimas. Oliva Sulimas.
From the one-armed Cuban.
One-armed Cuban in honor of Jim, our buddy Jim.
Yes, sir. There you go. Jim would inhale these. We were joking, remember? Remember? I said, "Bull, you don't inhale these." There's Jim. There's Jim's chair.
Yeah, I was just about to say puff puff pass it.
And Jim, and you would too. You could do it. You could do it, and Jim could just make rings. And I tried, and they all after me. I was coughing like for a week. For you, Jimmy.
You big Jim.
Man. Yep. Oh, Jimmy. And his fluorescent colors. I think it's here. Yeah. I think it's appropriate. I don't think it.
If they don't like it,
What? Fuck them.
yes.
Jim, right? Yes. That, Jim.
He would say.
Yeah.
And if you weren't good enough, you weren't good enough.
Yeah. A lot of people got that because they didn't deserve the best.
Not deserve the very best.
But if you knew us, you got that.
Oh, yeah.
You got that. He would just say, "Look at that."
Yeah.
That's
That's
funny.
I can't believe you're doing that. No. That's not. That one day he said over here, and he's starting to shake a little bit. He said, "If I could make one or two little suggestions."
That was a favorite line. He would always say that. Can I make a two little suggestions?
I know what you're thinking, but first of all, you're an idiot. So let me make a suggestion. That's what he was really saying.
Because at first, that was that. He would,
He liked almost everybody he met, but if he didn't like you, he would get real quiet. You wouldn't know he didn't like you. How you knew he liked you is if he flipped you off and smiled at you at the same time, he pretty much had you down and you were a friend for life. Jim was always the guy you could go to with advice for a camshaft selection, a carburetor selection. It didn't matter. He wouldn't look down on you like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. He would just give you the advice and probably a part number to go with it.
Yeah, so I met Jim here, I guess like everybody else did around here. I haven't known Jim for a real long time, so we got to conversing a little on everything automotive, and you know, we just think along the same lines, you know, for a while. So Jim had got these Kragers for his car, and he's concerned somebody's not going to install them right, torque the wheels and this sort of thing. So I said, well, I'll come over to your house and I'll take care of it for you. And he goes, really? I said, well, yeah, no, it's no problem. So I got my floor jack and stuff, and I went over to his house, and so put the right front wheel on there, no problem. Got my torque wrench and torqued it down. So I jacked up the right rear, slid his steel wheels off, put the Krager on there. I couldn't get the lug nuts to start. I was going, what is going on here? Well, somebody had put metric lug nut studs on the back of that car, and he went to the moon, because you can't imagine a metric lug nuts, you know, metric studs on the back of an American muscle car. So he had to get different, you know, lug nuts for us to finish that job. So, and then he built the 427, and he was talking about somebody to put it in. I said, I can do that for you. I'll take care of that for you if you want to do that. So, anyway, so we got the car to my house, and I pulled the 327 out, and we went from the 427 to also put a manual transmission and converted that, and a few other things along the road. So anyway, we're trying to put the transmission in and it won't go in. So he's had got the wrong bell housing. And I said, well, let's get the right bell housing. Nope, we're going to grind on it. And I said, oh, it's your stuff.
The titanium bell housing.
So anyway, so I ground on it. I ground on it real easy. You know, I said, well, let's get a little time. He got impatient. Get out of the way. I'm in the heck out of that thing. Well, that's your stuff, man. So anyway, all right, so we got that in there. Got the transmission in. And then I got a problem with the driver's side header. It will not fit. I said, Jim, I think we got the wrong header over here. Oh, it's the right header. I said, okay. Well, we obliterated, I think it was number 4 tube, because it wouldn't go clear the gearbox. So I tapped on a little bit. So well, wait. Oh, eventually he just got the big hammer.
And what do you say of Engine Masters? Haven't you seen that video?
Yeah, they smashed
it. It doesn't hurt 1 horsepower.
Well, that one too was smashed. So it did. We got in there and got it going, and pretty much the rest is history. You know,
he wanted to drive a manual for the last time. He did,
and I rode with him in it, and it was sporty.
And then Jim says he agreed. We're going to put an automatic in it. So Kirk, once again, is pulling out the tranny, and Jeff got.
I was there. I bought the bell housing. I didn't know about all the grinding, but no, just kidding.
Yeah,
I did know about grinding.
No one grinds on a titanium bell housing. I'll let you finish the story.
Well, that's it. What I would say about Jim is, if you hadn't seen him in 6 days, 6 hours, or 6 months, it was like no time had passed. He was like you just finished a conversation, you started up, and he always had a huge heart. He asked about my kids every single time. Okay. And I love that dude a lot. It was just, I learned so much just listening. He was an amazing guy, and I miss him a lot. So we had a cigar and a beer for him, and it's great that you guys all showed up.
And anybody who knows me, I talk a lot. And a lot. You know, like I said, an hour will go by. And except when Jim was here. Like I said, when Jim's here, when he first started coming in, and he started coming in more and more, I would write notes. I said, hold on, Jim, hold on, because we have a pad here. And I would always write notes because it was like, hold on.
So much knowledge.
And then one time Jeannie had called and said, is Jim just there too much, bothering you? I can, he ain't bothering anybody. Like I said, I talk a lot, but when Jim's here, I listen a lot. And that was from the day one. He was just, like I said, he would uld hold court. He was just, yeah. So
that's all I have. He was a great guy, and he missed, and I learned a ton from him, and I love him. I miss him.
One of Jim's friends from way back when, Van Toon, some of y'all might have known Portland, he goes by C. Van Toon, wrote this and asked that we read this for him. I remember the first day I met Jim, way back in 1984. I was working at Popular Hot Rodding magazine. Cam Benty, the editor and still my close friend today, and I went to have lunch with a car guy that Cam had recently met. When we got to the restaurant, Jim wasn't there yet. And a few minutes later, we heard tires screech and a loud car speed into the parking lot. Then here came Jim, all 250 pounds of muscle and belly. I swear his forearms were larger than most guys' thighs, barreling through the front door. Before Cam or I had time to say hi, Jim launched into an expletive-laden tirade about someone who had just cut him off in traffic and didn't have the brains God gave a turnip. Cam and I both laughed out loud at that. Then Jim did too, in his soon-to-be familiar hearty belly. That lunch was filled with car stories, boasts, brags, and technical trivia that Jim tested Cam and me on. The contest wasn't even close. Jim knew part numbers, Cam specs, the metallurgy of a GM 12-volt ring and pinion, and even the taste of different motor oils. Yes, the taste of motor oils. As a joke, he would pull out the oil dipstick from an engine and ask if you knew how to accurately determine what brand, weight of oil it is. Of course, no one knew how to do that. Jim would then lick the oil off the dipstick, ponder the taste for a moment, and with a straight face, tell you the brand of oil and its weight. With everyone's eyes bulging, Jim would further expound on the oil's lead and sulfate content, detergent additives, and even the location of the refining plant. That's Jim. He had no tolerance for fools or traffic, but he would always patiently answer any tech question, no matter how basic, from a respectful person. I used to say that Jim could make a car do things it was never designed to do. With his big hands, arms, and elbows flailing like he was operating an airplane with no wings, he certainly wasn't smooth, nor easy on machinery. But he could run with damn near anyone on the street or track. In case you doubt that, his nickname was Animal. He called me Tuner. Whenever we magazine staffers would be going somewhere together in more than one car, it was race time, even when going to lunch. I only worked with Jim for 3 years until Cam defected to run Carcraft magazine and took Jim with him. That put a crimp in Popular Hot Rodding's ability to create the best technical articles. So I left about a year later and worked my way up the ladder to run Motor Trend. Jim eventually was hired away by Edelbrock to work in a specially created job that included parts, engineering, PR, and the diner room. There he was truly in his element. And he forged more friendships that last through the decades. I'll miss Jim forever, but I won't say rest in peace, because I know he will be eternally racing in speed. Love your brother, Jim. I'm Shop Mom. I'm the one who puts up with all these guys and
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, you're the one that's hardest, right? I think that as we are here today remembering Jim, the thing I'd like you all to take away is who Jim was. One of his last phone calls to me was to ask about my daughter's health. Jim was in hospice care, and Jim wasn't going to be with us for long, but Jim was thinking about somebody else. And there's a moral to that for all of us. And we can choose to be kind. And we should always remember that the price we pay for love is grief. And while we grieve right now, we celebrate the fact that Jim was here and he was part of us. And we got to be part of him. This is a special group of people. Just remember that Jim loves everybody sitting around talking about him. Jim Losee loves the fact that he is the center of attention, holding court once again.
We have. I've never known anybody who would grab his phone and who he's calling on his phone or their personal numbers to the head of Petronas Ignition or Smitty at Edelbrock. Or if I have a man, I'm working at Edelbrock head, I'm like, look at this. Well, hold on. Well, Smitty, you know, Danny's over here, and then we put him on speakerphone, and his phone, right, Ward? His phone had the private numbers to everybody in the industry until at the end. No matter if there was a problem with the cam from comp or something, well, we're gonna find out. Do you know this is going on in the streets? Kind of. I mean, so he would, and they pick up the phone for Jim. Like I said, when when I was going to see him one time, he was gonna make it, and he gave me a list of all of the people to go see. Well, you're gonna go see here, and you're gonna go see. Okay, Jim, I got a lot. So I wrote this list down, and sure, I have to go to these booths and there are all these people, and I'm going to go see these people, and they're like, one of the examples is Petronas Ignition. You got to go talk to this guy. I don't even know people's names, I'm like, okay, and I go ask who, and everybody who, I said, no, it's okay, Jim. Anyway, they go get this, and all of a sudden everything parts, and the owner's sitting there holding court, and and I go sit down, and he is just like, I'm known him forever. Oh, Jimmy's already called me. He's already, because Jim called everybody ahead of time and let him know what was happening. And then he's like, you got to have, these $1,000 buy-ins, and you got to buy so much, whatever. And he goes, all that doesn't matter. You're set up. Jim's already said, dude, you're in. And I'm like, he goes, you sell that much? I go, no, Jim's wanting me to, whatever you need. In other words, in every place that we went to, right? I mean, Kirkland was the last time, and we visited with Smitty just before. Yeah. Every place you went to, it was everybody knows Jim. No, and now the stories more we know is like how in depth he was in R&D and in the Buick Grand National program. Like one of the early things on them were like when we hit it off was I can't go an hour without talking about Smokey Unit, and then it's like Jim's like, oh, I met Smokey Unit. You did, and it's like, oh yeah, I worked with him when I was at Edelbrock, and it's like, oh my God! And sure enough, Jim brings in pictures, and so yeah, Jim was, but he didn't. You wouldn't. I'm reading. I'm getting these stories now that people are sending, and it's like, damn, Jim, you never. If there was a place to drop, I know this or I know that, never. We never knew. Yeah. We knew Jim was an editor, but it wasn't like he dropped and told you. You know what? I know cam timing, or I know ignition timing. But that was just Jim. He would, for the most part, when we first met him, he didn't have patience for two people. you know. And he goes, how do you get anything done? And how can you stand talking to these idiots? And I go, Jim, those are our customers. Everybody has a different level of, you know. He goes, I need to run the counter and just get rid of all those people. And I go, all right. And I go, Jim, they're customers. We need customers, Jim. And he, you know, so it took him a while to accept, you know, answering. At the end, he talked to anybody at the end. He was home here, but he would never be here. When anybody walked in, anybody else, he would leave. He would leave. Very, very few people. Roy is real private. You're back there in the back, but we're working on a Hemi. And Roy didn't kind of like, I like Jim, doesn't have patience for chit chat. He comes in, we're working on his Hemi, and that's what we're going to work on. So it's kind of like the distractions. Roy accepted Jim right early on, and in that back corner, the only one that could be there when I was working on Roy's motor was really Jim. And then next came Ward. And then I kind of feel a little bit the same. You didn't have patience for none of, you're just like Jim in that sense. And then all of a sudden, I remember the day, the epiphany of, Ward, what do you think? And the same thing with Jim, what do you think? As opposed to, I don't care what you think, it's my engine. But he appreciated Jim, he appreciated our group to the point of, you know, what do you think? And then things have changed a little bit because somebody else has a different opinion. It's like, I kind of like that. So we all grew because of Jim. We all grew because of Jim. But he was very influential in every engine I built here in 10 years. I have a box back there of him writing. I wanted him to keep writing articles. So I thought, you know what? Lewis from Hill Country Carpenter Magazine has a little car magazine out here in the Hill Country, and I was trying to get like, man, Jim could still do some technical articles in there. Jim was like, no one wants to do it. And I said, Jim, you know, you can talk into the phone. So I was trying to encourage him on early because you got so much to give. And but if you see the 427, that's Jim building that motor. We're building it. He's walking around. His hands were like this when we were working on his engine, or we're working on anything technical, right? I have a box where he wrote on a set of piston rings, Jim Losee. He would only do initials because his hands shook a lot. I should bring his box out right now and just show you his piston rings. Just Jim Losee written right on it. He came just like, you know, I mean, his hands were like this. Is a one-off. I'll share that little story real quick, and then somebody else has to say something. But Jim called and had Edelbrock had Smitty send him this rare manifold. So it's an Edelbrock, and it has parentheses E. No one's ever seen one already. Anybody ever seen one? It's an Edelbrock E. It doesn't, the Edelbrock Performer, not the Edelbrock this. It's Edelbrock E because it's specific to Vic Edelbrocks, and it's one for a big cubic inch motor. So it looks like one of the manifolds, but it's the Edelbrock E in parentheses, E. So Jack's here, one of the guys, we're here, and he says, we need to take a die grinder and take the bottom off that E, make it an F. And I'm like, why? Because, you know, and he says, because you ain't fucking got one. And I said, we ain't doing that, Jim. This is Jim's manifold. So Jim comes in that day, and we're there, and I said, Jack wants to do something in manifold. We ain't going to do something in manifold, but Jack wants to remove the bottom of the E and make it an F. And he says, why? And I say, you effing got one. And Jim, let's go. And we go to the back. And I etch that bottom out and texture it. And it says it's a one-off Edelbrock F. Because you ain't got one. All right, so who's going to read the next one? You're reading Camps.
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever wants to go next.
All right.
All right, you got...
I met Jim in the garage of Tom Center, my editor-in-chief of Popular Hot Rodding magazine. I recently left Hot Rod magazine in an effort to move up to a magazine where I could move up more quickly in the ranks. So in strolls Jim, in a style that we all know. He was the parts manager at Glendale Chevrolet, and he was a good friend of Tom's. A Saturday afternoon at Tom's was all about Bonneville, filled with stories and audio clips from his last trip to the Salts. It was clear right off that Jim did not like me. Later I learned that he was mad about a story I had written for Hot Rod where I revealed just how cool the first-gen Camaros were, which had increased the selling price of those great cars. I don't really remember the content of our conversations, but clearly we shared an appreciation for 69 C28s. Tom Center soon left PHR for Ford, and due to my seniority, I took over the editorship working with Van Toon, who had come on board slightly after me. Frankly, neither Van or I or Peter had nearly the hands-on knowledge that Jim did. While Jim could really not write, I told him that we needed his knowledge on staff, and we could help him. We could work on the writing. For a number of years, Jim played the sage mechanic role, while the co-editors learned and helped Jim turn his writings into English. It was a real strong team, and we really liked each other as friends and as co-workers. If the trait of a good boss is to surround yourself with great talent, then I succeeded when I hired him both at CarCraft and PHR. But to me, Jim was far more than just a co-worker. He was one of my very, very best friends. We always had a good time together, and over the last 5 years, I came to San Antonio for work, annually spending a dinner with he and Jeannie. We talked regularly over the phone and kept each other close, and for that I will always be thankful. Rest well, my friend, and in last time, hey Q-Ball, let the guys in Kelly's Pool Hall know I'm thinking of them.
I'm Rick Love, don't know me, I'm with Vintage Air, and I got to tell you just a quick story of one of the first times that I spent a little time with Jim. When I first started full-time for Vintage Air, we were doing the old hot rod power tours, you know, but they were the long power tours. We went from L.A., Jeannie, you remember that, we went from L.A. to Detroit, and I mean, you'd go 300, 400, 500 miles in a day, and you still had to be there to set up your booth when you got there. And Jim was working for Edelbrock then, and he always called him Victor. He had never called him Vic. It was always Victor, right? It was always Victor with him. And Victor had a new 40 Ford built by Roy Brizio, high dollar car. It was a 40 Ford coupe, really nice car, and Victor spent a lot of money on it, getting it done. And Jim was driving that, and I was driving the El Camino that we had, and we were kind of running together. And with the stories you've heard about how Jim's driving was, that's how it was on the road for these power tours too. We had a lot of miles to cover, and they were covered in a hurry. And I was a lot younger then, and a lot of these guys were my hot rod heroes, and we got to one of these stops and we got to go to dinner with Vic. And boy, that was a big deal for me to go to dinner with Vic Edelbrock. And we're sitting there with the dinner, and Jim's there, and Vic was kind of talking small talk, and he kind of starts to me, he says, "Now, how's Jim doing with my brand new hot rod? Is he taking good care of it out on the road?" And man, I didn't know what to say. And everybody knows Jim's look with his smile and stuff. He kind of turns with that smile and raises his eyebrows at me. I said, "Mr. Edelbrock, man, he's taking good care of that car. He's driving it like it was his own." And Vic turns and goes, "That's what I was afraid of." And it was kind of the end of the conversation on his car then. But it was, man, we had some good times on those power tours. And that's the way he was. And the surprising thing was, he was hired in a public relations job at Edelbrock. And y'all know how he was with some people, like you say, he didn't suffer fools well. No. And man, a couple of those stops, I saw some of those. He didn't always get to talk to people at power tours after that, but that was a good story with Jim and Victor on that. Yeah.
Oh, this is Cam?
That's Cam. Right? No, I'm sorry. I don't know who
Brian.
this is from.
Brian.
This is from Brian.
Okay, this is from Brian H. Here's what I got for you. I spent a lot of time with Jim during our CarCraft days, and for some reason, I remember this incident. Probably the main reason why I love working with Jim Losee on the staff of CarCraft is because we had so much in common. From the types of cars that we own, to the places around LA where we used to race or cruise, and just be able to sit down and talk about our assignments, or just shoot the breeze. We're more than just work associates, we were friends. One of the perks of working for a magazine like CarCraft was being able to build project cars and engines. Like a good tech editor, Jim would always have cool stuff in the works. Sometimes it was a big block making loads of torque. Sometimes it was a high revving small block. I remember one car in particular that he built back then. It was a Chevy Impala that he was turning into an undercover police car clone. I don't recall what was under the hood, but I remember Jim wanting to get what was called a wigwag module, a small electronic device that only police cars had that would make the headlights flash left, right, whenever they're on a call. We were probably talking about it over lunch. We frequently went out to lunch together, and I told him that my dad worked in the LA PD garage and I would see if I could get one. That night I told my dad about Jim's build, and he thought it was such a cool project since he worked on police cars. Sure enough, my dad brought a wigwag unit home for me that weekend. Jim called and I told him I got it and would bring it to the office on Monday, but he couldn't wait. He said he'd come over to my house and pick it up. I told him I'd be out in the garage changing the oil on my Trans Am. I had just pulled the drain plug when Jim showed up in his flamed Beltec drop Chevy truck, another magazine project. I heard him winding out first gear as he pulled in up in front of my house. I rolled out from under the car to give Jim the wigwag, and as I walked over to him, I noticed him kind of laughing and looking at my car reflection. I told him I was changing the oil. He said, "Yeah, I can see that." Then he nodded his head towards my car and asked, "Do you always just dump your oil in a driveway like that?" I turned around and to my horror, I saw a huge oil slick in my driveway. I remember the time I was really embarrassed. I changed oil countless times, but on this occasion, I had the drain plug partially on one of the wheels of the floor jack, and when the oil started draining, the drain pan slid off the wheel over to one side and allowed a stream of dirty oil to pour out. Of course, Jim had a field day with that, and I'm just glad he didn't have his camera with him. We had a good laugh. Before he left, he asked if I didn't need any help changing the oil. It was the way he said it that was classic Jim Losee, being funny and kind of a wise guy at the same time. So when I did his car, we pulled the manual transmission out, converted it all the way back over to automatic. So he wanted it to be able to use the column shift. You know, it's kind of a stealth thing. Keep his bench seats, which he loved. And so anyway, so I got into adjustment. He likes to shift it manually, though. He didn't really want to be in automatic mode. He wants to bang through the gears, Well, the column would need to be modified to do that because you couldn't quite get it in the first gear. So he said, let's put a floor shifter in. I said, okay. So he bought this floor shifter. So I put it in there, and it was more of a street watch style floor shifter. Everybody knows kind of a long stock, and he says, "I hate this thing." So I said, "Okay." She says, I got another shifter coming." I said, "Okay." So I pulled that thing out, and he probably threw it away. Put another shifter in there. We got to go, and he goes, "I hate this thing." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I think I know the shifter that you might want." Because my brother happened to have a shifter that he took out. He hated, but I think Jim would like it. Okay. So pulled that shifter out. Stuck that shifter in, and he was happy. So
Jim is right. Anything out of a box, it wasn't. Those heads, and those are custom AFR heads, CNC ported, specific for his engine. And then we tear them apart, and then we changed to beehive springs, and we changed to. There was nothing that we fit right in. I mean, we were just. But he was a little more, like I said. He'll go through 3 or 4 shifters. He'd go through. No, I don't like it, or it wasn't right. It had to be exactly the way he wanted it,
sure.
Which was badass.
Oh no!
But who puts ARP studs on everything on the motor, the oil pan, everything, and then it had to be the stainless one. On Jim didn't want exhaust hanging on a car, but Jim wanted 3-inch pipes. How do you put 3-inch pipes on a Nova and not see a pipe? It's unheard of. You can't do it. It got done. Kirk made it happen. And to make this happen, Jim wanted the biggest muffler, this 3-chamber 4. I don't know what. He called up and the Flowmaster sending him mufflers. So Kirk cut the floor, pull the rear seat out, cut the floor, and tucked the exhaust up in there. You couldn't see nothing. The exhaust went in the back seat. And then Kirk cut it all, put it back, welded it, grounded it, and you looked original. It may be a little warm back there. They put Dynamat back there, like Jim said. There ain't gonna nobody be in my back seat. But it had Dynamat and the rear seat back in. But if you would never know, well, one day they're gonna pull the carpet back, and they're gonna just go, man, somebody really raised that up, and the seat still fits, and the exhaust is tucked all the way under. So the Krager wheels, you can't put a big wheel in a Nova. You can't put any kind of motor in a Nova because it's so light and there's no tire underneath it. Jim bought more than one set of rims. Gene probably going, I know, and then sent them out to his buddies and Cal. I'm sending you the wheels, and they cut them and they welded 2 sets of rims to have the right offset that he needed. From the side view, it looks like a Nova. There's Jim smiling when we were cutting his carburetor. And from the side, it looks like it has little bitty skinny tires. It ran a 10, 50, whatever. And that's on the street tires. Of course, he had, you know, Mickey Thompson Street Masters. But you can't put a big tire in a Nova. So to run 10 seconds in a street Nova, just to drive it to the track and run 10, is an amazing. That car had tons more power in it. We used the smaller cam than anybody would have used, because Jim knew, you know, me and Jim, from very on, me and Jim in the back porting cylinder heads, and we'd say, Danny, what would Mr. Air do? So anytime it came with anything else, and y'all can all use this, what would Mr. Air do? Mr. Air doesn't like to do turns. So if you're going to do a turn, make it gradual. Don't do a 90-degree turn, because Mr. Air doesn't like to do a turn. So he's always would use that. What would Mr. Air do? So right, when you're looking at anything, what would he say? Can I?
If I could, what did he say? If I could offer one or two suggestions.
That's what it is. You can't hear. He would always say, "Yeah, if I could
make a suggestion."
If I could make a suggestion, that was it. So whatever was going on, he would listen, and if I could make a suggestion, and of course, and he always had. But that was one.
Those suggestions probably cost me $5,000.
Yes.
But the car runs.
Right? You can't unlearn something. You know, knowledge is not bad. It's not, you know, you might not like it, you might like what you hear, but yes. When Jim, like I said, when I talk a lot, when Jim was here, I listen a lot. I write notes, you know.